You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, everybody, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. And, of course, this time we have got kind of a sequel of sorts, actually, to a show that we did very recently. I don't remember exactly when it was. It was a few weeks ago, I think.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
About 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yep, because it wasn't that, because I know last time we did the whole Darth Maul thing, so I think it was a week before that we did the 5 most wasted characters in Star Wars. And, of course, when we say that, it almost sounds like we're talking about drug addicts, but we're really not. We're talking about basically either wasted opportunities or, you know, characters that were just wasted in the whole universe in general. Now, ironically, this time we're doing a sequel of sorts. Like I said, it's really more about the 5 most wasted actors in Star Wars. And it's somewhat similar, actually, because I think a few of the people that are on our top 5, I know at least 2 of them were also on our wasted characters. So it was like the characters were wasted and the actors playing the characters were wasted. So you want to give everybody kind of a rundown of what the difference between the wasted actors and wasted characters would be?
Yeah, I mean, totally. Wasted characters kind of falls into, just the characters didn't really serve that much in the movies or in the films. They might have been hyped up and didn't deliver, or it was kind of almost like Netflix almost have these characters in there because they didn't really do anything, that sort of thing. The same kind of goes for the actors. We're talking about actors who played these characters who you could almost got anybody to play. Like, you didn't need this caliber or this level of actor or actress to actually don the role or the costume or not to play a character. You could have got, it's almost kind of like how we feel with, prime example would be Vin Diesel playing Groot. Like, you don't need Vin Diesel playing Groot. Like, you could have got anybody off the street and just did something in the studio and just did that sound. You didn't need to get him to do it.
And that's exactly right. It's one of those things where it's a situation where there's an actor that was chosen for the role, and it's like, look, you did not need this actor for this role. You know, it's usually a caliber of actor that it's like, okay, look. I could give you one example, right, that's not on our list, is Daniel Craig playing a stormtrooper. Now, I understand that he wanted to do it, and he wanted to be in it, so it's like, okay, well, you know, I mean, what are we going to do? I guess we can make you a stormtrooper, but it's one of those situations where we're not necessarily talking about a name actor, because somebody like Samuel L. Jackson was very much utilized in the Star Wars, universe or whatever. So
Liam Neeson, same way.
Liam Neeson. So it's not that we're saying that big name actors are necessarily wasted in Star Wars. It's really more about the role that they had maybe wasn't meaty enough. Maybe they weren't featured as prominently or as much as they should have. Or maybe kind of like we were alluding to with the whole Groot example, it's like, okay, you could have gotten any decent actor to play this role. You did not need this caliber of actor to play this role.
Or even to your point, even just as a kind of a sidecar to this, is that, the marketing of an actor or actress for their role to be like unnecessary or not even really, they didn't really do anything.
Well, or going to your point, right? Like, the marketing could have been to where the expectation was high, which is, I think, what you're getting at. It's like they market a particular character, and you watch the movie, and you're like, what do you do? There's like 30 seconds of screen time. Based on the marketing, and action figures and all that stuff, I expected something crazy. Now, Ted chimes in, and he brings up somebody that is not actually on our list. He thinks they're on our list, but they're not on our list. He said it's Star Wars night. And, my money is on Carrie-Anne Moss here, gang. Well, I mean, you know what? I forgot about her, to be honest. Because, and the reason why I forgot about her is the same reason you forgot about her. She was on The Acolyte. And, I mean, to me, everybody was wasted on The Acolyte. Because The
Exactly.
Acolyte itself was a waste. Now, you could say, oh, great, it's like, in my house, it's cats. At your house, it's dogs.
Right, it's the dogs. Right, exactly.
There's always got to be an animal, like, interrupting us at some point. But, yeah, I mean, again, I think that when you look at wasted characters or wasted actors, I mean, you have to look at first of all, you have to say, was their, participation critical to that role? In other words, was the roles written in such a way that it requires an actor of the caliber playing them? The second thing, of course, is did they even really need to be there as far as, was it just something that they want to do? Or, I mean, there's just all kinds of different criteria that we can use. But I think, I don't know, I think we could probably get into this. So number 5, we have Lupita Nyong'o, which I don't know. I go back and forth on this one. I do agree that in a lot of ways that she was wasted in the sense of The Last Jedi. I thought she was utilized well in The Force Awakens, but the impression that we got from The Force Awakens was that we were going to see a lot more of her. And then that little cameo that she had in The Last Jedi was almost unnecessary. And this is an example of how you create this really cool character and then you don't give them really much to do after a while. When you're promising that there's more, it's like, oh, how did she get Luke's lightsaber?
Luke's lightsaber, right.
Yeah, like, I mean, that was, well, that's a story for another time, she says in The Force Awakens, and it's like, well, we never find out. What's up with that?
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't she in The Rise of Skywalker? Like, she didn't say anything, but wasn't she just, like, sitting there or something?
Well, she was in The Rise of Skywalker, but I think she was...
It's just like at the base or something, right? Just kind of hanging around.
At the base, and she was kind of talking about, like when Leia kind of decided to go help her son, Kylo, and
oh yeah,
she was like, oh yeah, she was kind of explaining what was going on for us because she's force sensitive, so she was kind of like the mediator, like, hey, this is what's happening with Leia, type of thing, but. Again, like to your point, and this is why she's definitely on my list, is because I love Lupita. Like, I think she's a phenomenal actress. I think she has a lot of talent. And when you hear that she's going to be in there, you're like, okay. And then you're playing Maz Kanata, and Maz Kanata, just the depiction of her kind of gives you almost like a Yoda-like character, so you expect to get a lot. And Lupita is very graceful, so you expect to kind of get some more like wisdom, that grace, that very insightful thoughts, those very insightful thoughts. And she had her moment, when they first arrived. It's like, oh, of course she made the joke about Chewbacca, like, I love that Wookiee, that almost like she had some sort of weird relationship with but I mean, outside of that though, like outside of that little scene, it's like she really didn't offer much. And like you said, Eric, you were almost kind of promised more. She was like, oh yeah, that's a story for another day. We don't know why. Not necessarily you need to know why she's force sensitive, but we don't know like to what extent it's her force abilities. You know what I mean? So there was so much mystery surrounding Maz that we never got answered, and especially with Rise of Skywalker, having to go at breakneck speed to kind of encompass everything. I don't think they had a time to flush her character out, and so that's why I feel like Lupita was wasted playing Maz Kanata.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's the case of. I think it was even worse. The fact that you built her so much up in The Force Awakens. Like, if she had just been wasted, all 3 movies or whatever, it would have been like, okay, whatever, I get it. We would have still had the same complaint. But the fact that you establish her it did seem like we were going to get a lot more than what we got, unfortunately. And that was something that was pretty tragic, and that's why she makes our list. Because, look, Ted brings up Carrie Ann Moss. There are a lot of actors that were technically wasted in their roles. However, we're going for our top 5. And again, this is not generated from, like Screen Rant or, any of those other lists. This is our list of people that we felt, when you look at the franchise as a whole, these are the ones that are definitely the most, as far as, did you guys just not either fully flesh out the character, because that's another thing too, and this goes into our top 5 wasted characters, as some of the characters themselves were kind of a waste, so you have to look at that. But when it comes to Lupita especially, I think the problem was you established the Maz Kanata character and gave it, like you said, that Yoda-like importance in The Force Awakens. So now you've driven up our expectations, because it's like, look, we're expecting, this big role for that character in the subsequent films. So I just think that's pretty bad. All right, number 4. Our number 4 character, of course, is Simon Pegg. Now, I guess you can make the argument that, I guess it depends on how much you really feel that he was wasted. But again, when you really look at this character, I get it. He was done. Was this actually makeup or was this motion capture? I don't actually remember.
I'm not entirely sure if how they created Unkar plot, but again, like someone like Simon Pegg, being the comedic actor that he is, you most kind of know him. He's kind of most notable from the Mission Impossible movies.
Yeah, and Star Trek.
But Star Trek, of course, yeah. And the thing is like, again, kind of a wasted thing, because you could have got anybody to play, this. Unless this is a situation, I don't know if this is another Daniel Craig thing, where he's just like,
no,
just make me anything.
No.
And I don't think so.
It wasn't. I'll tell you exactly what this was. This was J.J. Abrams works with Simon Pegg a lot on a lot of his projects. And it's basically Simon Pegg is anything that JJ does, he's going to want Simon involved in it. And so I think it was a case of, well, what's the closest, like, what's the most, I don't know, appropriate character, I guess would be the best way to put it, for him to play in this. But again, it sort of goes into what you're talking about, because essentially what you're doing is you're shoehorning this talented actor into this role simply because you want him involved. So from that standpoint, it is almost like a Daniel Craig type of situation.
Yeah, and that's my thing. Is just that we don't, Star Wars is suffering enough. Don't add to the problem.
No, that's right.
So it's just kind of like, look, you guys have no problem trying to come up with good stories, getting good people who actually want to act, finding good directors, people who want to stay on for the whole time, not firing people, after you already made contract. Like, you have enough issues to just start, who's that? That has to be in everybody's movie together. What's his name from Deuce Bigelow? But he and
I know what you're talking about. I'm sure the audience
Adam
does.
Sandler, like, almost like have to be in like the same movies together almost.
Oh, is it Rob Schneider?
Yeah, Rob Schneider. Yep.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was thinking of when I was making that analogy, honestly, was the Adam Sandler, Rob Schneider thing. But yeah, exactly. But again, here's the difference, though. I'm glad you brought that up. Here's the difference. Adam actually uses Rob's talent
exactly
in each one of those films.
Yes, and that was about to be my next thing. It's like, at least Adam actually uses Rob as a character that actually is his talent, and he's actually funny and does exactly what Rob does. this was just again. You could have put anybody in the suit or mocap, anyone else to do this. So again, uh, I won't say he's a higher profile actor, but he's not. He's not necessarily. Well, he wouldn't be A list, but I would probably kind of A minus, B list,
No,
B
but
plus.
here's a good discussion point then, because and this is where we could pause this a little bit, because you can make the argument if you're J.J. Abrams, like, okay, I get what you're saying, but what's the harm? I want this guy in the movie. This role is available. He knocks it out of the park. Now, I guess from our standpoint, what we're saying is that, one, you could have put anybody in there. So he would say, well, if I could put anybody in there, I want to put this guy in there. And we would fire back by saying, well, yeah, but he's probably going to cost you more money.
I was about to say, like, he's going to drive up the cost of the movie
he's going to
first.
Drive up the cost of the movie, and it's not really necessary unless it is a mocap thing, because Simon Pegg is like one of those guys that's somewhat at the forefront of that. Like, he's good at that sort of thing. And I mean, there is a little bit of a talent there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're an Andy Serkis or anything per se, like.
No, but he's up there though. He's one of those guys that people get to do that sort of thing.
And if there was one of those situations where if that's what you're using him for, okay, fine. Like I'll recant that. But yeah, if you just
I agree. I guess with
because
you,
of how we normally see him.
Yep.
It's just kind of like, it's almost like throwing like, oh, we had Jerry Seinfeld as Ungar Plot. Like, why?
Kind of want to see that now.
Right. He's like the show about nothing.
Exactly. Either that, or it's like, what's the deal with?
Right. Exactly.
You call these portions? I mean, right. In my head, I'm like replaying every scene as like Jerry Seinfeld is Uncar Plot. It's horrible. But I mean, it does go to show you, though. You do have to be somewhat mindful. Now, granted, in a role like Uncar Plot, you're not just putting a name actor in there for the sake of driving up box office, right? Because that's another way that you can almost say is a wasted character, where you're basically allowing a name actor to play a certain role just because you want that name recognition. And then what often happens is it takes you out of it, which is one of the reasons why George Lucas didn't want name actors in there. Mm-hmm. In fact, because like I told the story before, Leonardo DiCaprio actually really wanted to play Anakin Skywalker, because DiCaprio is like a Star Wars super fan. He's like the first in line getting merchandise and stuff, from all these, whenever they go on sale or whatever. He's like a huge super fan. And it would seem like a no-brainer. You got like this super fan who actually wants to play the role. But the problem is that you'll never unsee Leonardo DiCaprio. You won't see Anakin Skywalker. And so that's why Lucas always stayed away from name actors in those kind of roles, because he didn't want that connection. Now, you can make the argument that in this case with Simon Pegg, because the weird thing is in the prequels, he kind of undid that, right? He got Liam Neeson, as Qui-Gon Jinn, and then he got Samuel L. Jackson as Mace Windu. Now, interestingly enough, and this is something that you and I alluded to, Windu just wanted to be Jackson just wanted to be a stormtrooper. He was like, just put me in. I just want to be a stormtrooper or whatever. But George was kind of like, look, man, if I'm going to have you in the movie, I'm not going to just make you a stormtrooper. And so he wrote the role for him.
See, and that's my point. Like, if you're going to do it, even George had sense enough to realize, look, I'm not going to waste Samuel L. Jackson, in my movie and make him a stormtrooper. Get on board, mother. No, put him
exactly.
Put him in something that Mace Windu was the perfect role for him.
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing is when you look at even Ewan McGregor, You know, like
Yep.
again,
He's another one, right? Name actor. Now he wasn't like a huge
he
name,
wasn't
but he was
named at the time, but he was starting to
he was
get.
up there. I mean, he was up there because he had done. I think he did Train Spotting. I thought he did that before the Phantom. Maybe that was in between Phantom and Attack of the Clones, but pretty sure that was before. Like he wasn't like a household name,
Right.
but I mean, he was a name actor. I would almost call him. I mean, if he wasn't A-list, he was definitely B-list.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could almost say the same thing even in the sequel trilogy, right? About like Oscar Isaac. He was probably the most known of the main three because Daisy Ridley was basically new. Boyega was new. Oscar Isaac had
Yeah.
actually done some stuff.
And if you look at what George did in the prequels, anybody who was a quote unquote bigger name actor had major roles, such as like you said, Liam Neeson, Ewan McGregor. We
Right.
had
Well, it was basically
Samuel Jackson, but then you
Mhm.
had Natalie Portman. You had
Yeah, there was a lot of A-listers actually.
yeah, and then you also had can't think of his actual name because I'm so used to calling him Dooku.
Oh,
But
Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee. You know, so yeah, I mean, like I said, you got a lot of larger name actors, but they actually served a purpose.
Well, that's it,
And like I
right?
said,
They
if you're
had
gonna
a
be
meaty
here, you
role.
gotta, yeah, if you're gonna be here, we're going to use you.
Right. Whereas, like with Simon Pegg, I mean, again, that one I could almost say, okay, that one more
If
so
you
than
if you're doing the
Lupita.
mocap thing, I got you. I will
Yeah,
concede to that.
and I mean, I guess I don't know. I agree though. I mean, the Unkar plot thing wasn't necessarily the meatiest role for that actor, but let's get Ted's comment in here before we go to our number 3. Ted says, often when you cast and promo an actor with an established reputation, then you expect their character to be some level of exposure or significance. Some just didn't get that. See Del Toro. Yeah,
Oh, trust me.
we'll
get
be
to Del
seeing
Toro
Del
in a minute.
Toro soon.
We'll get to
Just
the
spoiler
star in a
alert,
minute.
he did make our list. Actually, what's
Yes.
funny is he also, like, the DJ character even made the list. So he's one of those, like dual things. But I think that that's a big problem. And when we get to Del Toro, definitely we're going to discuss that because now you have the expectation part, which is something we talked about at the beginning of the show, is that sometimes it's not so much that the role wasn't meaty enough or whatever for the actor. It's just that when you announce that a particular actor is going to be involved, well, now you start speculating on what the role might be, and then when you find out what it is, you're like, seriously? I mean, you can get anybody to do this.
Or it sounds interesting, but then they portray the way it's portrayed. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that's it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like so. Even if, well, we'll get. I'll cover that when we get to Del Toro.
Yeah, cover that when we get to Del Toro because we're gonna need something to talk about there. But actually, we can. Our number 3 somewhat has that same issue, and our number 3 is Max von Sydow because he's another one, man. He's like a just an absolute legendary actor, kind of in that Christopher Lee variety. Oddly enough, my introduction to him and the thing that is still the nearest and dearest to my heart is when he played Ming the Merciless in the Flash Gordon movie. And I mean, he like really knocked that. Now, see that, even though you look at the Flash Gordon movie and go, okay, it's a little campy and cartoonish, he approached it seriously. And I mean, he loved the Flash Gordon series. And I mean, he perfectly nailed Ming. I mean, it was like the comic book jumping out at you. So I mean, it was just incredible. Here, it's not like he's doing a great job, of course, because he's a phenomenal actor. But, Lawrence Santeca, I mean, if you were going to do more, see, this is the thing. Okay, he didn't get that much screen time. He's like dead within the first like 30 seconds of the film, right? But I think he had like 2 or 3 lines in the whole movie.
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, if that was going to be the introduction, but then you were going to use that actor and go and make more content that surrounds that and say, okay, this is where we're going to meet Laura Santeca toward the end of his journey, but we're going to go back and we're going to get Max and we're going to, maybe do some more stuff on the Disney Plus shows. Okay, whatever. Right. But that's not what happened.
Not at all. And yeah, and that's just it. Someone of his pedigree, you bring him in for what? And it's like, again, you could have got anybody to play that role. They had 3 lines. It's underutilized. And it was wrong. His character did something of great importance, don't get me wrong. Because without Lawrence Santeca, then, it doesn't get to, the location of Luke doesn't get to, Poe, and then Poe doesn't get it back to the Resistance, and blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, it's not like it didn't do anything that wasn't of great importance, but the use of this actor for that character, especially for the time in which we got, I could see if there was a big action thing, it was a whole lot of drama. If he was being, he gave some great speech or it was interrogated or something, like, you got to give him something to make it like that was good.
Now, I know he wanted to be in a Star Wars movie too. And I mean, see, this is the other problem, is that it's not entirely the fault, partially, but not entirely the fault, because yes, you can look at Lucasfilm and say, okay, if you got these A-list actor dudes that really want to be in your movie, at least have the decency to write a really good, meaty part for them. On the other hand, you can't expect, like, if you got like 20 people that want to be in the movie, you can't, you got to serve the story. You can't serve the cast.
Right. And if you're going to serve the cast, at least, maybe write something good for the cast, perhaps. You know what I mean? Like you said, just make the story worthwhile, that they would even want to act in it.
Well, yeah. I mean, and again, I can't stress this enough. I think that this is even though he knocked it out of the park again, and he will forever be branded as Lord Santeca, and we love Lord Santeca. I mean, I actually thought he was a cool character, and he is extremely important. But you don't necessarily understand that. But I mean, you are told that, but it isn't until you read some of the other peripheral stuff. I was
about to say, like, you got to read some of the novels and things that surround it.
You get that, or if you just read like descriptions. Yep.
And that goes back to your point. Like, if you're introducing a character into then you need to explain this character. We shouldn't have to go through all these other, peripheral, forms of content to find out, like, oh, okay, that's who this person is. Like, you introduce us to him in the film, deal with it in the film.
Yeah. And if you're going to do that, it blows my mind that they got him. And this actually goes into almost a Del Toro conversation, because when I first heard that he was going to be in The Force Awakens, I was expecting maybe he was going to be the main villain, like the Palpatine of the sequel trilogy, until we found out Palpatine was the Palpatine of the sequel trilogy. But,
right.
But like, he would be kind of like almost either the
or maybe Snoke. I would say even like Snoke. Like, I could see that.
Or maybe he's the one pulling Snoke's strings.
Yeah.
I thought, or at least somebody high. I mean, I thought he was going to be a little bit more than what he was. And you really didn't need somebody of his caliber to play that role. I mean, you didn't. You could have gotten any really good actor to do it, and it would have been fine, and nobody would have blinked. Nobody would have been watching this going, this is good, but if they had gotten somebody like Max, like, that would have really been what they needed. Nobody's saying that. And again, right, you can make the same argument even for, like, your Qui-Gon and your Padme and all that. I mean, if they had gotten just a decent actress to play Padme, nobody was going to be like, I guess I should have gotten, Natalie Portman for that. Probably would have worked better. But again, they had more to do, right? I mean, you gave them something worthy of their abilities, and actually, this is something that you and I have talked about a million times. Really, they didn't, because the dialogue was poor in the prequel trilogy. He didn't direct the actors half the time. You get these Oscar-winning or Oscar-nominated actors, and all their dialogue is wooden, and their acting was not maybe as good as it could be. I mean, they elevated those movies as much as they could. But you could even make the argument that Liam Neeson and Natalie Portman were wasted. Just because of,
True.
just what you subjected
Yeah, I
them
mean,
to.
yeah, it's just only because they're just naturally good at what they do. I mean, those things
Right.
just shown through anyway.
Right. But I mean, the thing is that you should have written for the caliber of actor that they are, and that wasn't the case. But,
Right.
Again, they're forever cemented in our heads as these characters, so that's cool. All right, so number two, we got Benicio del Toro for just precisely what we've been talking about. I mean, when he was first announced, I remember the speculation was insane. Everybody
Oh
was
my god!
like, "Oh, he's going to play a Sith Lord, yeah, or a Dark Jedi, or
Sith Lord, yeah,
something
man,
like that."
And
Now,
that's the thing, because he has such a catalog of playing like these dark, gritty, and these gritty films. He's kind of an edgier guy. I mean, even his look, you just kind of like, all right. But then when you finally read the description, because I remember when we were speculating, and then it finally came out that he was a slicer, and the slicer is pretty much like a hacker who's, like, okay. Now, I was just hoping that they weren't going to try to make him like some little nerd or something like that, like, but more. And what he was is kind of a shifty, kind of snaky kind of guy, which he did, but then it was kind of overshadowed a little bit, or I won't even say overshadowed. It was tainted by the goofiness sometimes of the whole stuttering thing, the kind of aloof way that he kind of carried himself. It was kind of weird, and it was like, this, you got Benicio del Toro to do this? Why?
well,
Like,
and the big problem, because like you said, it was revealed that he was going to play a slicer. Now, anybody that has been a connoisseur, let's say, of the expanded universe knows what a slicer is and knows how cool of a character they actually are. Because that's the thing. That's what got everybody excited. We're like, wow,
Exactly.
We're finally getting slicers in canon, because there's been a lot of famous ones in the expanded universe, and they've all been really cool characters. And they weren't nerdy characters either. I mean, they're kind of like how the DJ character was. But they just happen to be like really tech savvy. And there was all kinds of hope and speculation and, the typical Star Wars thing. Get our hopes up, and then we see it, and we're like, now we're apologizing for it, But I think that, honestly, when you look at the character itself even, it wasn't a bad character. I mean, they could have done a little bit more with him, and they could have maybe not necessarily done the stuttering, because like you said, that was a little off-putting. I mean, that was just them trying to do something different, So it's just not a normal English-speaking, typical human male,
this is
basic,
those,
type of thing or whatever.
It's one of those, let's just do it because we can, or let's just be progressive just for the sake of being progressive.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, well, why do we, like, does it really add to the,
Well, but
like, I could understand if it was like a thing where, and you could almost kind of make it comical, where, like, you needed to say something, and he has a problem because he's got the stutter, so it's like he can't get it out. It's like,
well, what would be funny? Like, if he needed to like open some but use a voice command.
That's
and he
what I'm
kept
saying.
Stuttering and see, that would be Star Wars humor. That would be hilarious.
Exactly. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you did it now in a way that was kind of like that, or if you just made him somewhat of a not nerdy, but unsure of himself kind of guy, like just a guy who just lacked confidence. Smart, but just not confident.
Well, the problem is that would go against what a slicer is. Because slicers are, I mean, they actually nailed that part of it. They just underutilized them. Because even the whole thing, right, where he double crosses them and all that, I mean, that
Yeah,
part was
like,
really cool.
well, I guess what I mean by not, how do I want to say it? Like, I guess not. Um, it's a type of personality I'm trying to how to explain, but it's one of those guys that's kind of like he's devious, but he's just kind of I don't know. I'm trying to figure. I have to think of the phrase, but I just didn't like the way that. And what did he do when he was in the jail cell? He was like, slippy boppity bippity boppity boop
Yeah, I know you
type thing
always
from like.
you
And I
always
was just
point that
like,
out.
what?
Like every time we talk about DJ, you always bring that up.
Yeah, because it's just so stupid. Like,
It is.
I get it's a Disney property, but come on now, like that's a little bit on the nose.
And
Like,
again, that's
I
not
mean,
slicer like either. I mean, that's just
no, yeah, this
it's
is
bad enough that he kind of looked like the space version of Buster Poindexter. And he kind of had that vibe. You could have gotten,
he kind of had a Jack Sparrow vibe to him too.
yeah. Well, and again, that could have almost worked if one, they had handled it a little differently, and two, maybe gave him a little bit more to do. And again, there's just a lot I think that they could have cut out of The Last Jedi and focused more on some of this other stuff, because things, it's almost like how The Rise of Skywalker went, where certain things were painfully slow, but other things went a little bit too quickly, and it was a little too almost like easy or convenient or whatever. Not to the degree of The Rise of Skywalker. That was like insane. There was absolutely no tension at all in that. I mean, everything was just real easy. They just, literally at one point, literally fell into the next clue.
I think the only one that had some tension was when Rey thought she killed Chewie. That moment,
Yes.
I will say, like, because I was just like, whoa, did they just kill off Chewie? Like, I wasn't even kind of in the theater, like, no, they didn't do that. But, and it kind of had me on their grip. I was like, man.
Well, and I was wondering too, because I remember thinking about the expanded universe, how they killed off Chewie with that moon falling.
Right, exactly.
So I was kind of like, ooh, is this going to be a little homage? And, now that Han's gone, what's the point of Chewie being around, really? And, that would be an interesting way for him to go. It would almost have worked better tension-wise if they had killed him off, to be honest, because then Rey would have had that on her conscience, and there would have been a little bit more meat to the story there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, I'm glad that they didn't. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm, wanting Chewie to die or anything like that. But, I mean, if you're going to talk about story, I didn't want Han to die either, but it made perfect sense.
Right.
Now, him coming back as a quasi-Force ghost was a little strange. And that was definitely unexpected. But, yeah, I mean, DJ was one of those characters where... And really, it's like that whole thing where... You have a unique situation where both the actor and the character were wasted. So that's really odd to me. Because you would think that you would at least... You have a 50-50 shot, right? I mean...
Right.
Either the character or the actor you could have utilized correctly. The fact that you utilized both of them, you wasted both of them...
You're right.
You got to be Lucas Disney level, to actually do that. So, and honestly, our number one choice, our next one, is pretty much exactly the same situation.
Absolutely.
Except now we get
to
a
me,
little bit
on
a grander scale. Yes, only because of the marketing that you referred to earlier, which was a foreshadow of our number one choice, which is Gwendolyn Christie as Captain Phasma.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have an actress who's, capable of a lot more. Now, granted, I will say this because, again, I think that the character was wasted more than the actor. I would make the argument with DJ and Benicio del Toro that it was an equal thing. I mean, on one hand, and the reason why I say that is because, yes, you could have gotten any good actress to play that role in the sense of, most of the time she's behind the armor. I mean, you could have even voice changed a male actor and it would have done the same thing. But the only reason why I say that the character was probably wasted more than the actress, although I still agree, look, she's our number one choice. I still agree the actress was wasted, but not as much because she did have, there was some acting chops in there. The way that she was interacting with Finn, the way that she was portraying just being, and you really get this, by the way, when you read some of the other Captain Phasma material, right? That she did give Phasma a unique spin. Whereas if you're wasting an actor, the argument is that you can plug any actor in and it wouldn't change the performance at all. Here it would. Here, if you put a different actress in there, Phasma would have been different. So I say she was wasted, but just not as much as the character.
Here's the thing about Phasma, and there's a lot to it, but like one, this is a time where Kathleen Kennedy was at the height of her, the Force is female and, her whole woke agenda. And she wants, women to take more of a prominent role in Star Wars. Okay. Now, to me, this is odd for most people because you have basically a woman leading the military. So that in and of itself is kind of putting. However, Phasma looks so cool, you don't care about that because it's like, you know what? She looks like she kicks major butt and I want to see it. It's like, and especially after, then what's to come is when we've already seen like in the animated series where we've seen like female bounty hunters and things of that nature, like Bo-Katan and, things like that. So we're used to seeing women in these kind of roles, not necessarily leading the whole army, but okay.
Well,
if you
I
want
mean,
us
look,
to go with it, we'll go with it.
Let's go with this. Take a character like Asajj Ventress. She could wipe out the entire army.
True.
Forget leading it; she could defeat it. So it's not like it's not like having a female stormtrooper or whatever leading an army is really that much of a stretch when you got people like Ahsoka, Asajj Ventress, all these people that could actually decimate the army.
True.
I mean, if you can accept that, then that wouldn't be much of a stretch.
True. Now, when it comes to the marketing, she was one of the first things that they kind of put out there when it came to the marketing. I mean, and she looked amazing. And the thing is like her armor, the cape, the blaster that she's carrying. I didn't even know it was a woman at first. I thought it was a guy.
Yeah.
And then not to mention like, Gwendolyn Christie is an imposing woman. I mean, she's tall, she's big. For those of you who don't know, who've never watched Game of Thrones, she's heavy in that. So that's kind of where most of us know her from. And I'm like, okay, so I'm familiar with the actress from Game of Thrones. You got her playing this role where she's kind of like the commander of the First Order army, which also was cool because the First Order army looked completely different than Stormtroopers. I mean, granted, of course, you saw the similarities, but I remember like when they first showed the trooper, when I first saw the trailer and they did the flicker on the gunship.
Yep.
And you saw like the helmet, I was just like, I want one of those. Like those are sweet.
Yeah, it was like a modernized Stormtrooper helmet,
Stormtrooper,
which I actually thought was cool because you had the clone troopers had a look, and then the Stormtroopers were an update of that somewhat. And now you have an updated version of the Stormtrooper, and then of course you had the Sith Trooper, which is kind of an updated version of that. So, yeah, that was all cool.
Yeah. So you got this cool character that's all chromed out, literally, and I'm like, okay, let's see what she can do. And then we get there, and Oh my god, what a waste! Complete waste. I mean,
Yeah,
and that's why she ended up in the trash compactor because she was a waste. I mean, I think they already knew. It was like, look, we have nothing else to do with this. We just might as well put her in the trash compactor.
it was somewhat Freudian. Well, and
Yeah.
again, I mean, because a lot of these, and this is where we have to be, because a lot of it really is a waste of the. That's why I say the character was wasted more than the actress, because it's the character that should have been featured a lot more. It's the character that should have been doing a lot more things. The actress, I mean, again, I still say that it was a waste simply because where I think it's a waste of Gwendolyn's talents is because you didn't utilize the character as much as you should have.
Yeah, because my thing is, as I talked about her impressive build. Now, granted, you could have gotten somebody else. There's a plenty of these WWE superstars who are like Charlotte Flair. Probably could have been. I mean, uh, Captain Phasma.
Geez,
I
you could have put
mean,
Gina Carano in there too.
that too. That's what I'm saying. Like,
But again, and this is my point, it would have changed the characterization of Phasma, and that's why I say it
how
wasn't.
much? Okay, so from what we saw in film, just asking, from what we saw in film,
Because
the
she
lines
has
that
a
she
certain
delivered.
way of speaking, of carrying herself. It's sort of like David Prowse
I'm
versus all
proud.
the other people in the Vader suit, man. There's like a you
Yeah,
can always tell the Prowse ones because of that gait and because of just the way
yeah.
that he emotes and acts. And in order to bring a character like that to life, you need somebody who is really high quality. And I'm not saying that there are other. I mean, you can't compare a WWE chick though to like an actress. But if you found,
But
well, some, but if you found an actress or somebody who could actually act, because this is beyond just acting. This is also, like I said, doing a lot of the emoting and things like that. Now, I mean, that's why I say that it would change the character. Now, here's the thing. We wouldn't have known the difference, right? Because you would have had to have something to compare it to. It would have been like now, if somebody had taken over for Gwendolyn Christie in The Last Jedi,
yes, I would
then you
agree
would have
with
been
that.
able to go, oh,
Yeah,
well, all right, they really should have, stuck with, and now you could see the difference. And that's how we knew the difference with the whole, we understood what David Prowse brought to the Vader character once we saw other people taking on that role and going, it's just not Vader, though.
yeah, exactly.
Because we all thought it was the voice, but when you really stop and think about it, it's like, no, there's a lot more to it than that. His job was actually really difficult, and so was hers. And so when you take a lot of the interaction, between her and Finn, which was most of the time when she talked,
Hmm.
versus, a lot of the body language and just a lot of the things that embodied the Phasma character. That's why I say it was still a waste, but not as much as the character itself. I think the real waste was the character.
Yeah, I would grant you that. I would say that I would agree, but I still feel like the actress was and to your point, the actress was wasted because you didn't allow her to be on screen
Right.
often.
Right.
So,
And then again, a lot of this does tie in to wasting the character, right? Because if you don't
mhm.
waste the character, then the actress has more to do. But I think that there's a little bit of a difference, and we can even compare this to Del Toro. Or it's almost like you don't need, there's certain characters where you just don't need that high caliber of a actor to be in. That actor could be, or that character could be in like maybe one scene or 20 scenes. The character themselves just doesn't require that much. In this case, I think there is a requirement for a good, solid actress. But the problem is they they didn't really deliver on the promise of what this character was marketed to be. And that's where the waste really comes in, and it's almost like, well, okay, now you can actually make the argument that, which is what I think you're saying, is like, okay, if you just stuck somebody else in the Phasma thing for as little as you used her, I'm not saying you get somebody that has no abilities whatsoever, but you could have just gone for a good actress, versus, or you just put somebody Amazonian in the suit and just had somebody do the voiceover, kind of like what Pedro Pascal does, on The Mandalorian.
Right.
I mean, he's rarely in the suit actually, but he does all the
Mm-hmm.
voice work. But to the stunt people's credit, who do the Din Djarin character, they emote well, and that's really what you would have to get. And honestly, for as much as they feature the character, now if they featured Phasma more and she was more prominent, well, then yes, you would need somebody who could actually rise to that challenge. So yeah, from that standpoint, I would agree that she is a waste. That's why I didn't debate any of this. I mean, when you sent me the list, it was like, yeah, all right, that looks good. We'll just go with that. Now, I had forgotten about people like Carrie-Anne Moss, and you could even argue the dude that played the guy that was in Squid Game that played what was the character's name?
Oh, you talking about from Acolyte?
Yeah, because he couldn't speak any English. He had to basically learn it to speak it. The Squid Game dude. I always forget his name. You can make an argument that he was a waste. Because he's a really good actor, actually, and you didn't necessarily need him to... Well, maybe you did, because he did have that role. And the same guy that played Khmer, you needed somebody who could sell that, too. Somebody who's physical but also could act. Ted brings up a point. He says, I also think a lot has to do with how PR promotes the character and casting to get buzz, and not much regard for their role in the story that we end up actually getting. In other words, don't believe the hype. Well, I would say don't believe the hype on a lot of fronts. First, don't believe the hype that you're about to see a good movie or a good show. And in the case of the show, don't believe the hype that, you might get a really good episode 1 or 2 and then it falls apart by 3 or 4, so...
Absolutely.
But, I mean, I think that all in all, even though you could point to a lot of wasted actors maybe, who... And again, a lot of it would be probably from the TV shows. Because I don't think too many actors were necessarily wasted. Certainly not in the prequels or the original trilogy. I don't even think, other than, the ones we mentioned from the sequel, because actually, if you think about it, most of the characters that we had were all from the sequels. Actually, I think they all were, right? Yeah, Gwendolyn Christie's sequel, Benicio del Toro's sequel, Max von Sydow sequel,
Simon Pegg,
and Lupita, all from the sequel trilogy. What a shock! I think we've actually uncovered a bigger problem. Because, if you think about it, like another one that I was contemplating, but then when I was really stopping to think about it and really think about the role, because it's been a while since I've seen it, I'm like, no. And that was Nick Nolte in The Mandalorian. But when you actually look at his character, that Ugnaught. Yeah, I keep forgetting his name. Quill, I think it was, or Quill, or something like that. Krill or Quill or something like that.
Yeah.
He was like kind of that wizened master sort of thing that helped Din find his way.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, hey, when you look at stuff like that, just because an actor doesn't have a whole lot of screen time does not necessarily automatically equal a wasted actor. As long as the role, and this is, I guess, the criteria that we kind of alluded to this, but we probably should have been a little bit more direct at the beginning of the show by saying the idea really comes from, does this character really need this caliber of actor? That's really what it comes down to. You look at somebody like Yoda, yes, you need a Frank Oz because you need somebody who is both an expert at operating a puppet, the whole puppeteering thing, and acting and emoting and all that other stuff. So you can definitely say that that's not wasted. Alec Guinness, 100% not wasted as Obi-Wan. You know, James Earl Jones, definitely not wasted as the voice of Darth Vader. You know, so you get...
I don't even see anyone, I don't even know anyone else who could have done that. Like, I don't know, you could replace James Earl Jones with anybody.
No, because the thing is, and this is, I had this debate with somebody years ago because they were pointing to all these people who successfully do the Vader voice, and I'm like, well, yeah, because they're copying what James Earl Jones did.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but when you're, because even David Prowse himself, because remember, he was like, famously, he had that weird Scottish accent thing going, and it sounded
high pitched.
Right. Well, in the documentary that he did, he actually did the voice of, like, when he redid the scene, and he actually did, like, a Vader voice, and it sounded great. It's like, well, dude, if you had done that, you would have been the voice of Vader. I mean, it's actually interesting to see, but again, he was influenced by James Earl Jones's thing, and he was kind of doing a little bit of that. So it was James Earl Jones that kind of had that. Well, he naturally has that voice anyway. But the thing is that he basically gave Vader the voice that all these other people copy. And now, thanks to AI, nobody has to copy it anymore.
Exactly.
You know, that'll live on forever and ever and ever. Which is, you know, it's really interesting because it's a little off topic. Oh, David actually writes in too. He's joining us. He says, "Hello, gentlemen. It's Star Wars Day. Sorry I'm late." Well, yeah, we already blew through the list, man. You're just gonna have to watch this again. You could go ahead and hit the like button still, because trust me, you'll like it. So go ahead and hit the like button. Anybody else that hasn't hit the like button yet, go ahead and do that now if you don't mind. Algorithm really likes it, but it is interesting when you think about the whole AI influence on Star Wars, and it's probably getting to be time to do another show on that, actually, because there's more things coming out, both officially and unofficially, that are really utilizing AI well. Now, there's certain things, of course, that it's not perfect yet, but it's almost like the whole de-aging thing, where as time goes on, it's just gotten better and better and better. And it's not taking a whole lot of time to improve either. I mean, you're talking like every year there's vast improvements, but all the time on YouTube I'm seeing constant stuff of what Disney should have actually done. You know, they'll have these little scenes that they would write, or you know, people are basing, like I saw one where somebody, it's a part one, somebody took George Lucas's sequel trilogy idea, and now they're making an animated version of it, and it looks and sounds fantastic. And you're just like, see, this is what Disney should have done. And what's hilarious to me is all this stuff that's on YouTube is better than anything Disney is doing, and that is so sad to me.
Right.
And it's not even so much because a lot of, you know, people are thinking, well, maybe it's because, you know, you got all these like super talented people that are better than the animators at Lucasfilm. No, they're not. They're not better than the animators of Lucasfilm. What it is that they're not constrained by the marketing and the accounting and the shareholders. Yeah, exactly. All that stuff that has been enslaving. Well, that too.
Yep.
Politics is definitely a thing. All of these things enslave the Disney Lucasfilm partnership, and it's what's corrupting the brand. Because a lot of people say, well, you know, it's being ruined, and I guess in a way you could say that, but I say it's really more corrupt than ruined, because they're allowing all these influences to dictate the direction they go, the stories they tell, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, definitely tainting.
Yeah. Or as a fan,
there's pee in the pool. That's basically.
Yes, exactly. And it used to be that it's like, okay, well, it's just that. I just won't swim in that area. But unfortunately, it's making its way.
Yeah.
And there's very few
downtown.
Yeah, there's very few areas downstream, let's say, that you know, that you can go. And so that's what's happening, is that when these fans are doing these projects on YouTube, it's like they're not constrained by any of that stuff. They have a talent, they have a love of the franchise, and they're making
autonomy.
Yeah,
Yep.
and you know what? What I'm hoping happens, and I'm optimistic about this, because you know that Lucasfilm and Disney are seeing all this stuff. In fact, I know they are, because it was the one. I remember when Rogue One came out, and they had done the Tarkin thing, and this like kid ended up doing a better version of it or something like that, so they hired him. So Lucasfilm is definitely watching these things. What I'm hoping is that they see that, hey, listen, if you don't give us, the fans, what they want, the fans will make it themselves. Because now we all have the tools to do it. And so they're going to lose money, because it's like, well, nobody's going to go see the crap that they're putting out. We'll just watch the stuff that our fellow fans are making that are more in line with what we think these characters should be doing. And then once they start to see that, it's like, okay, hold on. Let's pay attention to what they're doing and what's getting millions of views, and then we'll do that. So I think that there's a light at the end of the tunnel as far as that goes. All right. Anything else you want to say for the good of the order?
No, sir. I think that wraps it up for me.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for both of us then. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Again, in the comments section, Ted brought up Carrie Ann Moss from The Acolyte. That was a wasted character. Let us know in the comments who you thought one of the most wasted actors was. Remember, we did characters before, so you can always go back and watch that episode, by the way. It was only a couple of weeks ago. Go back, watch that episode. Leave in the comments what you thought was the most wasted character. And then on this episode, leave in the comments who you thought was the most wasted actor. In other words, again, the criteria is, did you need that particular caliber of actor for this particular role? And that's what you would base your decision on. So leave that in the comments section. Of course, we'll respond to anything that floats in there. We always thank you guys for joining us and, for catching us when we're live, because it's not always easy to do. I recognize that. So, yeah, do we have any idea what we're doing next week, or are we just leaving it and figuring it out later?
We leave it to the will of the Force.
All right, we'll leave it to the will of the Force. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.